For the final project, you'll need some kind of database application, and you can just do simple ones like I have here with a select, insert, update, and delete, and have some lookups involved with it and so forth. If you have something real world, fantastic. You can design it that way. That's even better. If you draw a blank on what to put out here, go out to a website that's selling something and get their information and whatever data they're gathering, put out here. Now we looked at the delete right here. So let's run this. And I'm going to insert a new work order number. Probably keep always calling it that. Let's see, customer number 2, David Hayes, total 3,000, tax 200, address 100 Main Street in Wellington, Kansas, 67 something. And click insert record. Doesn't like something there. Let's try that. State I must have had only as 2 characters or in my definition, so wouldn't let me do more. Okay, so come over here to delete. Click this question mark. I see different ones here. I see 130. So I can double click that, and I'll bring that back, and I can click delete order. And this is what it comes back with. Delete from orders where order number is equal to W0130. Now let me put a W and then a question mark, percent. And click delete order. Now, this is not, it's going to give me an error. I thought. No, it just didn't.
It searches through for something that looks like it. If it doesn't find anything, it just doesn't delete anything.
Right.
I found that out when I was playing with it.
What's it look like? Looks like this. I don't know if I'm actually smart enough to do this, but we'll try. So I put in a character that shouldn't be there. Let's try putting in a single quote here. Or let me try to put 1 equals 1. Delete from orders where order number is equal to W or 1 is equal to 1. I don't know if this will work or not. I'm not a hacker, but I'm putting in characters that really don't belong, like that single quote and equals. Didn't like something there. What didn't it like? Let me do it again. Okay, it ended with a single quote here. So it automatically attached on a single quote at the very end. Okay, let me see if I can get around that then. Or W or happy equals happy. Let's see if I can. Okay, so it finished off the single quote there for me. Just deleted every record I had. That's the problem. I'm not very good at those. I have to sit there and play with it to get it to work. But if you allow them to put these extra characters in, and you just put this out in the web, they can delete every record you have in your database. So part of that is you got to check to make sure they're not putting in some kind of weird character. If you're gonna make it a robust application, now you don't have to do this for the final project. This just is kind of a building upon our database. Now I brought up a web page. By the way, that's called an SQL injection attack. These are our string functions, and they actually give you what do you do SQL injection attack. Injection. Yeah, I did mean that. Okay. And that's where you're putting in items that don't belong in order to manipulate the SQL. When you're building a statement, you oftentimes will build a statement to issue, the SQL statement, based upon input from the user. And then they put in something like this. I didn't have to have both of those. I guess that's all I had to do right there. Now this will sometimes let you into a system. Sometimes you can put it in there where it'll delete all your records. There's all kinds of different variations of that. You can drop your table, which is even worse. It doesn't just clean out all the records, just actually drops the table completely. And I won't go through all this, but you can sit there and read about all the different ways you can do an SQL injection attack. Now, I'm a little surprised that it actually worked. I hadn't tried that before. I've read about SQL injection attack, I've taught it, but I never actually tried to implement it in a database system. I would have assumed that Access was smart enough not to allow items like 1 is equal to 1. But obviously not. Okay, so let's see how to handle that. To see if it contains a character, here's our C# string functions. I was just looking at, there it is, contain, because I couldn't remember it myself. The C# contain method checks whether a specified character string exists or not in the string value. So that looks like the one we'll work with. Sometimes they're called different by different names. You can do a index of is one that's often popular in programming languages, but this one actually does contains. I'm familiar with the index of. The index of would be if it returned a -1, that means it didn't find it. So let's come over here, and I'm going to double click this. And I'm going to clean up my input a little bit before I actually issue this command. Now remember, we're bringing in this this text box right here, delete order number.text. So I'm going to have a variable up here, string and order num. And order num is equal to tb_del order number.text. Now sometimes you won't have all of your code within one place. You actually will have a separate function, separate method. Public void delete record. Then I'll take all this try catch that we had. Maybe. Never seen it go away for so long for just a cut. There it goes. And I'll paste it up there. Now I'm going to call this delete record when I'm all said and done. So down here I'd call delete record, and I'd pass in the order number. But we're going to do some error checking here. I'm going to say if my order num dot contains returns a string indicating whether the specified substring occurs within this string. And notice it's returning a Boolean. And I'm going to look for a single quote. If it contains a single quote, then maybe I want to do a message box dot show cannot have single quotes in the order number. Else, then I'm going to delete my record. Okay, so I'm looking for a single quote. Now, I don't think in 13 years' time I ever programmed this in applications that did, because they were all done internally. That does not mean that somebody in the company couldn't have issued a malicious attack and deleted every record in the table. This is especially important, though, if your database is going to be accessible from the outside world. Something you should equally care about for your internal employees, because you're never sure what could happen. Somebody's mad and so forth. Didn't get a promotion, wanted to go over to IT, they wouldn't let them, something. And so it, in theory, should be everywhere. You have to understand how a hacker thinks in order to protect your systems.
Who asks to be put in IT?
To be put into information technology? I don't know. To be honest, I guess we never had anybody that really Yeah, we did. Our hardware, the guy who did our hardware, the computer hardware at IFR, he transferred over from customer service. For the most part, you already have to have those skills when you get in. And sometimes where people get a foot in the door in a company is they'll go work in the help desk. And help desk is a mind-numbing job. It's a horrible job. At IFR, when I worked there, we had to serve on the help desk, I think, one morning or half a day each week. And you get people calling up, and bless their heart, this wasn't like they could help it or something, but they're just not very good with computers. And, they would be shutting off their monitor when they were trying to shut their computer off. And they didn't understand why it was kept coming up with the same error when they turned it back on. They couldn't double click fast enough. One lady, I swear computers just didn't like her. Had to be the only reason. And because whatever she touched, it broke. And it wasn't like all her fault. Very few of them were actually her fault. It was just strange how the probability and statistics worked out that way. I went and looked at a problem down Wichita. I worked for Coke, and they were up in the north part of Wichita. And then I went down to her service center down there on 47th Street is where it was. I'm not very familiar with Wichita, but which is about maybe the middle of the town. Maybe, wait a minute, 47th Street is south. It's the south part of town. And I went down to look at a problem. And back then they had something called modems that would call up via your telephone line. And that's how they connected to our mainframe up there at Koch Industries. And for whatever reason, I could never actually do it myself. And it puzzled both of us because the guy I was working with, he would connect successfully. I would perform the exact same functions. It would never connect to me. We finally agreed that the computer just hated me there. I mean, I even got to the point where I was timing it, how many seconds it'd take before he had press the button, so I could do it exactly like he was doing it. And I don't know how much we messed around with that to try to figure out why it wouldn't let me actually connect to the mainframe. I'm sure there's probably some kind of logical reason behind it. Probably I have more static electricity in my body than anything, and I cause a little voltage increase or decrease or whatever it might be, and that's what caused it not to work. But we never did figure it out. Weird problem. So yeah, sometimes people go into IT. We used to have a customer service degree here at Cali. And I didn't quite agree with that. If you go to college for a year or 2 years, you don't really want to start out one of the worst jobs ever. But the person that proposed the degree and got it approved was actually our customer service here at Cali. So I knew where he was coming from. But it's a very low-paying job and horrible position having to answer all those questions. Usually, I never had the patience for it. When somebody call up and say, "Hey, I'm having trouble here," and I'd say, "That's okay. I'll come right out and look at it." So I'd walk myself out to the production floor. I'd walk out to their office at IFR and look at their issue. It was just easier. I needed to exercise anyway. It was just easier. I found that if I tried to do it over the phone, and it just took me longer. So, anyway, long answer to your question.
But it was an answer, so that works.
Yeah. Ironically, I got an email from the VP of academics, and Google is having some kind of technical support certification that a lot of community colleges are starting up, which is kind of an advanced help desk. So she asked me to look at it, see if that's something we could start here at Cali, and I have to look at it close. If it's actually something meaningful where I think somebody could have a career path, then I'll say yeah. But if it's just give you a few skills so you can sit on a help desk for 8 hours trying to help somebody double click their mouse, or how to learn how to turn their computer on versus a monitor, then I probably suggest we don't go that route. Okay. Let's see. So let's run this. Of course, I have no records to delete because I've deleted them all already. I think they're gone. Let's see, yeah. Remember, like if I come over to delete and click that, nothing comes up. When you actually use the data aware controls, that's where if you delete something, it doesn't actually delete it. It's like a secure sandbox it creates for you. Okay, so let me create a record. Okay, now if I go over to delete, if I click that, I see I have something to delete. Now if I just I was making it a lot more complex than it needed to be. I guess this is the part I need to put in. This single quote here should end the single quote that I started with. Of course, that'll say equals and then be blank. But either way, if I click the delete order, it'll come up and say cannot have single quotes in the order number. So now I've eliminated the issue of them putting single quotes in there. If they put, let me not delete the one record I have, they put anything else, click delete order, then it does that. Now, I would have to go through and look at all the examples, but I think that most of them are based upon having a single quote in there. And if you can't put a single quote in there, you probably can't do an SQL injection attack. Just notice that these have a single quote here. Again, you have the issue here is the select statement here. If I come over to this select statement here and I'm looking up an order number, it's issuing this SQL command right here. Maybe not. Oh, I have to put it here. Never mind. Okay. Well, found something. I suppose that's because the percent was there. Like this. You can put another statement here on at the end that will drop a table. Of course, I have to know the table name to do that. So if I don't know the table name, then it won't work right. Let's copy this. And I have to think this through now. I have my A here. My single quote would end it. So I'm thinking about how I'm building that. I automatically put a single quote in front of it. Single quote ends it. And then I'll drop a table. And I've got a table called users. Question is, why do I need that select statement there? While most SQL Server implementations allow multiple statements to be executed with one call in this way, some SQL APIs such as PHP functions don't allow this for security reason. This prevents attackers from injecting entirely separate queries, but doesn't stop them from modifying queries. But either way, this has now got a single quote in here. Let's try to run this. I don't got it, like I say, I don't got a table called users, so if I try to drop it, it shouldn't be a big deal. So select star from orders where order number is like. Then I don't have my percent there. That caused me troubles. Drop table users, select star from users. Okay. Click OK. Doesn't work because I don't have that table. But that demonstrates to you how you can connect together multiple queries. Let me run that. That's weird. I expect at least to see my SQL. I think that's because I didn't close the database. So my poor programming caused him not to be able to sit there and play with it all day. That's ironic. Okay. So if I come back here, we get rid of those and have the A. Like A, and then it puts on a percent and a single quote at the end. Most of them don't have that percent there. So if I put on a single quote here, or A is equal to I tell you what, these people that are hackers smarter than me. Like A or A equals A percent. Okay, it looks valid. Okay, so no record found. And this table name is orders. So the question becomes then, of course, this could end with a single quote. Oh, so that's why you have to have the select at the end. Because the select at the end handles that where my code's going to put the single quote at the end. Anyway, I won't be able to demonstrate what I'm one there, but basically you can put on another SQL statement after that. I could do semicolon, select star from orders. Then R from orders, or order number is equal to of course I don't got an S there, so that's going to screw it up. And now it's been screwed up one time. It's be screwed up from here on, but you get the idea. So when you're developing a database application, very simple one if statement will safeguard your program. Does that make sense on protecting against an SQL injection attack?
Yeah.
There's a lot more ways they can hack in than just SQL injection. But some of the newer programming languages are a little bit safer in that. If you're writing in C, at the end of every chapter, there's 4 or 5 PowerPoints that talk about how to safeguard your program, because you can hack in, you can overload inputs, you can do a lot of different things in C that can cause you to get into a system. Okay, I'm going to do a file, new project. We got a little bit more of database that we're going to look at eventually. It's called Link. But first we're going to take a detour and take a look at some web application. Visual C# here, there's a web option. If you don't have a web option, then if you see if I remember where it's at. It's either get tools and features, extensions and updates. Get there. I haven't run this for a while, so it might require the newest version to be installed before I can bring up the... Or maybe not. Yeah. Okay, so let me update that, and then we'll take a look at it. Hopefully it doesn't require Visual Studio to be reloaded.
It doesn't. It is incapable of accessing the update unless it restarts. So.
Oh.
I don't think it forces a restart, but it may.
I did a lot of this update in the beginning of the semester, but it's been a while. But come to think of it, that was the beginning of the fall semester. I don't think I've had to update very much here. Okay. Now, when you get here, you know, if you select different items here, it'll allow you to develop for the web, so forth. You see it down here at ASP.NET and web development. This is the core piece for working with that. I think I went through and I modified everything except for these right here. And I marked everything else as I wanted to install it. I wasn't planning on doing anything with data science and analytical applications to begin with. And data storage and processing, sometimes running those additional databases really slows down your computer. I got MySQL installed and running at home, and I need to uninstall it because it's just really slowing it down. That plus the Oracle I got installed. And Python takes over your computer, so I didn't like that. There's a package called Anaconda for Python development, and if you choose this, Anaconda cannot update outside of this package, so you're forced to use Visual Studio to do Python development. Okay, well I got all three of these selected, and then I got the first two web items here chose, so I'm fine. And that's why I can get to this. So if I do a file, new project, you see there's a web option, and here's ASP.NET Web Application.NET Framework. Now, down here it says 4.6.1. And I can come up here and I can choose different frameworks to use. You might think, well, shouldn't we always just choose the latest framework? No, you have to choose the appropriate one. And I tried this test earlier and I couldn't choose the appropriate one, so my example didn't work. What you'll find is that like my website, I got www.mathheals.com. It's hosted on a Windows box. And it allows, I'd have to configure it, but it allows you to run ASP programs up there, .NET. But it does not support every framework. So it'll specifically tell you which framework you have to pick. Now, since we're running it on a local computer here, I'll just leave it as default as this 4.6.1. Then I'll click OK. Different items you can choose here. Here's a web forms that might be useful. It may be empty, but I'll choose web forms. Then I'll click OK. Comes up here and it talks about different things I can do and so forth. But over here in the Solution Explorer, if you don't see the Solution Explorer, it's under View somewhere. Right there, top. That's how you get it to appear. But if you right-click on the web application, 2 or whatever name you called it, under Solution Explorer, then there's an add. And if I go down to the add, I can choose New Item. And different items you can create. You can create an HTML page, JavaScript, style sheet. I want to create a web form. So this one right here. And then click Add. It comes up here, and this is HTML. This is how all the web pages on the internet are designed, is with this markup language. If I right-click on this tab, let's see. I'm lying to you. If I come down here to design, I thought it was under there too. There's a button for design here at the bottom. It's also back to source. That source has a less than and greater than in front of it. That's a standard notation indicating a view HTML. But if I click design, then I can drop a label on here. I can take a text box and drag and drop it to the side of that. Come here, drop a label here. Drop a text box to the side. Take a button, drag it up here. Dropped it in the wrong place. Let me drag it down there. Label, drag it right there. And drop another text box. Right there. Just like everything else, these have properties associated with them. So if I choose this label here, if I come over, you see there's a text. That's going to be my first number. This one, I'll choose it, and I'll change the text to number 2. So I'm gonna add 2 numbers together where I'm headed with this. This one, I'll change the text to sum. And my button, I'll have it say add. Now, this box right here, if I come over here, there's an ID for it. And I'll call this TB_num1. For this one, it's got an ID, and I'll call it TB_num2. And this one I'll call TB_sum. Of course, the obvious thing here is they're going to put numbers in these boxes. I'll click the Add button, and it'll add them together. Now, if I click this add, I can come over the lightning bolt here. You have less things that you can do. If you compare this against your standard Windows application, you're going to have less commands to program because it's web-based. So you have less flexibility in that regard. If I double-click the blank here next to the click, this will be a button click. And I'll declare num1, num2 in the answer. And num1 is going to equal to int32.parse tb underscore num1.text. Num2 is going to equal to int32.parse tb underscore num2.text. My answer is going to be num1 plus num2. And then I'll write that out to my tb underscore, what do I call it, sum. Dot text is equal to answer dot toString. You'll notice that although so there were some slight differences, that's the exact same code that I used first day of class, second day of class, where I showed it an application that's adding two numbers together. Then if I click here, it takes me back to my design. And you notice here it's different. It doesn't say run. Mine says IIS Express, Microsoft Edge. So if I click this is like running a little web server on my laptop. Notice it's running localhost. So again, that's our web server on our laptop. Now, I don't know if IIS would be running by default on the newest Windows 10. I haven't read about that. Typically, you have to get it up and running. And I think the one of the installs I did way back when on Visual Studio enabled IIS. Now, if I come here and put 3 in, I put 4 in, and click Add, it adds them together and puts 7. But more than that, this is a web page. So that I could put this out on the intranet, and people could have an application that would add two numbers together. Wouldn't be very useful, but they would have it. I could upload this to my mathheals.com. So like if I wanted it over here, I could upload this application to that location. But again, you have to know your particular settings for your hosting to what .NET libraries it supports. Now, how you upload it to like MathHeals is there's a publish somewhere. There it is, build publish web application. Microsoft has a hosting service. There's also down here IIS, FTP, etc. Or you could publish it to a folder. The idea, if you publish it to a folder, you can copy that folder to wherever you want. I could copy it to mathheals.com. And so it's not publishing directly. If I could come to the configure, do I stop debugging? Yes. Well, try it again. Publish. Comes up and asks me what I want to do exactly. Publish method, web deploy. There's also FTP. Some packages, some hosting packages are set up such that you can integrate it so it publishes seamlessly. Some you have to just upload via FTP. I think I chose FTP earlier. You'd put in your server information here. This would be like an FTP. I'm making up a number there. Like that. Site path would be the folder you want to put it into. Username would be whatever your user is. And password would be whatever your password is. And your destination URL. Although I don't think you need that. I think this up above would get you there. But if you click validate connection, mine will come back and doesn't like the fact that I'm not putting in a valid username and password. And then you click next, and then it'll go and publish, and it would be up there for you to run. Let's see, web hosting, Windows, ASP.NET, and .NET libraries. Trying to find a web hosting that allowed ASP.NET. Let's get rid of that. What if this is a valid one? Again, it tells you what it supports, which version of ASP.NET. Doesn't look like it gets into the detail of the .NET libraries, but I'm suspecting that having these right here would I don't know if those correspond to the .NET framework or not. Let me look. don't think it was under the publish. Okay, let me just show you. 4.6, 4.6, 4.7. Okay, so that this numbering appears to correspond with your the libraries. 4.5.2. Nowhere does it have 4.5.1. And there's probably a reason. Some of those may have security issues with them. And they don't want you to allow that. Looks like they allow any version of 4.6. So it looks like this package is specifically focusing on Windows, and looks like it's pretty robust in terms of the ASP.NET. Now, I created a just as proof of concept a couple years ago. Might be a little bit more than that now that I think about it. 4 or 5 years ago, I created a application to add two numbers together. And I put it on my website just because I wanted to see if it would be possible. And there was two issues. One of them I didn't really like. The fact that you went to that website, because I was thinking about creating math tutorials, kind of walk you through, even have video, sound, and so forth. Because you can do everything with C#, once you get going with it. It would ask you to enable it. It would say this is a potential security risk, some sort, and then say click here to enable it. And I didn't like that because I figured if I put anything up there, if that pops up with that little scary message, nobody's going to actually enable it on their machine. And then the second issue was I put that program on there, and it's probably 6 months later, the Chinese had hacked into my my website. My students were reporting my math classes that it was going so slow that they couldn't do anything. Couldn't even bring up a static web page. And I talked with, and you may have heard this because I've mentioned this a few classes. I talked with Network Solutions, and they said you're doing something wrong. And that was the extent of their help desk. It's like, well, I'm not doing anything besides static web pages. And I wasn't doing anything database-wise. I wasn't streaming. I wasn't really doing anything. And he was little help. I got really mad at that point. Went to a different hosting provider, meaning to switch the entire website over. And I still have both of them, as weird as that sounds. I never did make that jump. But I do like some of the features in the other site for programming purposes. You can do different languages and so forth. And so I've kept both. But then I talked with another individual. I don't even know why I called Network Solutions back. And he was actually quite helpful. He was pretty good for being on the help desk. And he told me to go look for files. And I found files that shouldn't be there under my site. And the Chinese were some individual over in China, I'm assuming, was hosting their own site under my domain name. So, and he was selling, he or she was selling, I think they were Gucci bags and Nikes. I'm assuming fake ones, but I don't know. And I'm very glad of that. I'm glad he wasn't doing anything. I know they're illegal, but he wasn't doing anything that would cause the FBI to come to my front door. And I got to looking and reading, and ASP.NET is a security issue. It does open up holes. Now, I don't know if that's how they hacked into my website or not, but between the two, where it popped up and asked them to say this is a security risk, and where the Chinese had hacked into my site, I discontinued that idea and haven't played with that much with it since. Besides the basics of what you just saw. Now let's go through, because I've never done this before, and we got about 20 minutes remaining, so I'll give us a little bit of time to play. And I want to see if it'll let me add on a database. Okay, so I'm going to do a file, new project. and create my .NET framework, and I'll go with that. And I'll go with my web forms. Okay, so I'm gonna right click over here, and I'm gonna do a add wherever it's at. There it is. And new item. And I'll create a web form here. Click add. And again, you click the design button down here to go over there. Now I want to view my data. So do view. I'm probably looking right at it. Do you see Data Explorer anywhere? I don't see Data Explorer. See Data Tools. Let's look at Data Tools. No, that isn't it. And come down to here. Don't see anything data related there. Dynamic data. Well, let me add on an Object Data Explorer. Then configure that. See if this gets us there. I'm not seeing OLE. No. Well, forget that idea then. Solutions and folders, home. Okay. Let's take a look at something else then. I wanted to play with the database. I wanted to see if it was easy as drop in as the last one, but it didn't look like it. Okay, choose the .NET framework again. And don't save that. I'll choose web forms again. Okay, so I'm going to right click on this over here and choose add new item. Let me try this. EF Designer from database. New connection. I don't see access here. Okay. Well, I'm going to right click on this and choose add. And I'll go up to new item here. Web form was down there. Choose web form. Then click add. Now if I go back to the design here, now I want to drop on a label. Drop on a text box. Another label. Another text box. Another button. Another label. So basically recreating that last bit of code. And text box. Okay. Now if I go back to the source here, we're going to see HTML, but we also see our ASP elements added in. I try to remember, have you seen much HTML? These are tags, if you're not familiar with HTML. And really not quite sure why this put this one into a div, but didn't put this one into a div. Okay, come over here to design. I press my space bar to move that over, like that. I go back to my source, and it's put a bunch of these symbols. The ampersand, NBSP, semicolon, that's non-breaking space. This integrates your C# programming with web elements. And so if you've worked with HTML and so forth, CSS, all that, then you can use those features to achieve whatever you want. Sometimes you can do it just by like pressing space bar here. Sometimes you can use other techniques to do it. You'll notice you'll have new elements down here, new components. Like I don't think we had a file upload, but that is standard standard HTML when you're creating a form to do that. Excuse me. Looking for table. There it is. You can come here and drop that table right here. Now you can also right click and say view code. Table over here talks about the different items. Rows, it's a collection. The 3 little dots here, and you could modify that. Now if I come over to my my source, you notice we got our table here. The idea on some of these items is any code that's run via this, you can program. So it's not a static table; it's a dynamic table. Now I don't know what kind of options it has. Let's see. I can type border equals 3. I don't think that did anything. Okay, let's go back to our source. Border width, I guess, is the command. There it is. Border width is 3. I'm not sure if I see the border width being 3 there, but I'm assuming it's working. Let's put 30. Okay, now I see it. See how it's got a border around it now. Now you have to get used to being different properties over here. And I don't know if I hit split on this or not before. But comes up here and does my border width is equal to 30. And when you click inside a tag here, it puts elements specific to that tag, which is kind of nice because I don't know all the particular options. Border wasn't working for me, so I just looked over here for border width. Border style, you can also do the options over here. You can have it dashed. Doesn't appear to mean a whole lot with that thick of a border. Click down here and label. You see you got your label here. And a lot of these correspond to what you would see over in HTML. Now in HTML, you got your form here. And then down here you got your closing form. And interactive elements are contained within a form. So that's why you're seeing those like you are. This says run at server, and this is different than your standard HTML, which tells you to run like a PHP file or a Perl program or something like that. Here, since this is the program kind of embedded in, then it runs that. Okay, now our table. Let's go back here, change that back to 3. Knowing HTML and the basics of it helps. If I come down here and type a less than ASP and there's a table row, That's equivalent to the TR. And then if I did an ASP colon table cell, that's corresponds to the TD. I don't know why table cell is TD, but I'll put colors here. Red. I have another table cell. Blue. And then another row. Another table cell. Purple. And another table cell of black. Okay, now if I go back to my design, you see we got our red, blue, purple, and black. I would have swore a border actually puts borders inside too. But maybe I'm not remembering my HTML correctly. Or they got a different way of doing it. For example, on table row, now that I've clicked in there, you see how there's a border width right here? And you can use this where you put 3 in there and it'll automatically build that. So you don't have to do it completely from scratch. This one, my border width, that's weird. Oh, there's 3. I don't know if I need it in table cells or not. Obviously do. Come in here, border width 3. Strange. It says 3, but and you see our borders here. The only thing that doesn't have a border around is purple. But if I click the purple here, okay, now that's 3 isn't there. Strange. And now if I go to my design, you get that. So this shows the integration of our C# with HTML, and to create web pages such you can have interactivity with them. Had to play with the database part. I was hoping it'd be real easy, but it doesn't look like it's real easy. I understand SQL Server because Access isn't really a database designed for the web. You can use it. I rewrote one website that was using an Access database into SQL Server just because the Access database kept having issues. Again, it wasn't designed for that purpose, or at least back then it wasn't. It might have evolved where you can. Well, we'll go ahead and stop there. We only got 2 minutes left.